Hey everybody, I know we said we would do our Braids deck tech last week, but we had some issues with the audio and we wanted to really get enough time to get it set up right so we could have a nice quality product for you guys. So thank you so much for waiting, and yeah, enjoy this Braids deck tech.
Welcome to the Convenient Commander Podcast, where we help to make cEDH convenient for everybody. I'm your host, Mason.
And I'm your co-host, Jared, aka JB Gartner. Coming up on the show today, we have a Braids deck tech, our long-awaited episode. Since we first announced it, long-awaited by the three of you that are watching, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's jump right into it. So
Braids.
Well, why are we doing this?
Let's get into the why or why. I mean, we want to talk about why we built the deck. Or,
sure. I mean, do you know anyone who plays this?
Besides, as far as I know, it's just us. I haven't really seen it. I know there's one guy grinding tournaments with Braids, but it's a different list. He takes it in a little bit different direction. It's more like a Keurig deck, I want to say.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's just giving cards instead of mana. Is that kind of the idea there, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
you get the card advantage rather than the mana advantage, which is part of the things you want to see cEDH commander.
You've been on this list a long time, right? Like, you've been...
Well, not this list exactly, but I've been on this commander, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So what kind of, I guess, prompted you to want to build this list with me? Because I think I was the one that texted you initially. I'm like, hey, I think this commander is insane. I don't know why people aren't playing this. Like, this seems like nuts. And you're like, oh my gosh, like, actually I have this deck, yeah.
Originally I saw it and I'm like, hey, draw 3 the end step. That looks like Ancestral Recall. Repeatable.
Yeah.
So originally I took the list in a very like aristocratic style, and it was more casual, more high power. It wasn't built for cEDH meta. It was just like, hey, I'm gonna draw cards, I'm gonna recur whatever I sack, so that way I always have something to sack. And it was like those repeatable, great, like Grave Crawler, Bloodghast, like all those creatures that come back or you can catch from your graveyard, which was not the way to go. It's too easy to sack creatures, I think. Creatures and artifacts are easy to sack. Artifacts a little bit less so, but creatures are the most easy. It's like you got decks like Rograk. I was like, okay, I'll sack it. I can play it later for 2 mana.
Yeah, and then you got also 2 in the more casual space, or high-powered casual, like they got tokens. Like,
they got tokens.
It's not happening.
I mean, even cEDH, we got Tavesh. It makes 2 thralls. I'll sack a thrall, sure.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
Creatures are easy.
Creatures are very easy. So, building the deck, I just wanted to draw cards. But then you definitely took it in like the cEDH route. So what made this deck appeal to you? Like,
yeah. So actually, I think what made it appeal to me a lot was because when I first was getting into cEDH last year, I noticed that one of the biggest predictors of success for a lot of cEDH decks is the rate at which cards are drawn is a really important thing. So having card advantage in the command zone and having a really high card quality in the deck is one of the biggest predictors of winning games. I mean, you think about it like this, like, if casting spells wins you games of Magic, the more access to spells you have, ideally is going to win you more games of Magic. And you're seeing more of your deck, more good. Yeah, more cards, more good. That'll be a theme of this episode.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what inspired me. And I looked at a bunch of different lists online, just seeing, okay, what are people running in this combo? Because I pulled Braids out of a draft pack when I drafted Dominaria United when it came out, and I was like, oh my gosh, this card is sick. Heck yeah, I'm picking this out of this draft.
It's pretty cool.
It was sweet, and I was like, sure. And then I was like keeping it. It was rotting away in my binder because I just couldn't find a home for it. And then I was like, wait, I'm getting into cEDH now. Drawing cards is very relevant. You want a commander that draws cards. I'm seeing a lot of Tymnas. This is also 3 mana, except I can Jeweled Lotus this out. It can't Jeweled Lotus of Tymna out fully.
I mean, with a land, yeah.
With a land, but no, this is just Jeweled Lotus Braids. I don't even need
You can use your land for something else.
Exactly.
That's what's great about this, yeah.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, this is a lot of card draw. This has so much potential. Why is nobody on this? And so that's...
Monocolor really hurts.
Yes,
in cEDH, if you're going to be monocolor, you have to do something really, really well. And I think Braids draws cards really, really well. And that's what we're leaning towards. Because, like, the only monocolor decks that see play are Magda,
Yep.
which does this thing really fast, really well. Selvala makes a lot of mana.
So I'll Brostorm, yeah.
What else?
Kirik was good.
Kirik, yeah. I think this list is better than Kirik personally. I know you think that too, Raleigh, right?
I mean, I'm biased, right? I'm
yeah,
biased.
we're both biased.
Well, because what does Kirik give you? Kirik gives you mana, and
Yeah.
Braids gives you cards. And in general, I think
Cards is better than mana.
I think so. That's why I'm a big believer in this list. Also, Kirik dies to a gentle breeze, and this deck won't. Like if you stop this deck's win attempt at the end of the day, I still have a way to draw 3 cards a turn.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I still have that outlet.
Kirik goes from 4 to 6 mana, Braids 3 to 5. There's a huge jump from 5 to 6 mana, I think.
Yeah,
in the format.
for sure. Yeah, recasting Braids after she gets removed is
it's hard, but not super.
No, it's not the end of the world for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that we should probably go over. What am I even saying right now?
Go over the primer that I
should-
spent
yeah,
freaking a week writing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should probably
primer,
go through.
that's what- yeah.
So with this primer, we'll just go through just the basic.
Oh
pros,
man,
pros
we should
and
go over
cons.
we should go over the name of the deck for a second and really just explain to people, hey.
What? It's a good name. So we can't put this in. You're laughing way too fucking much.
We'll definitely put this in. I'm editing this.
Okay, yeah, you're okay.
I'm keeping everything.
So
in.
the deck is called Braids Black Farm. Now hear me out for
Quote
a
him on
second.
that. Cut it up.
Blue Farm is a deck that
Blue Farm sounds significantly better.
Because it's the color blue, right?
Yeah.
So we don't have access to the color blue. So the reason why we're calling it Braids Black Farm is because the point is that it draws faster than Blue Farm.
Yeah.
It draws faster than Blue Farm, but it only gets one of the colors, that color being black. And so the thing about that is you have some pros and cons there. The pro is that I believe that Braids will draw you more cards faster than Blue Farm. Because Braids comes out turn 1 and draws you 3 cards just like that, right away. Immediately.
That's what the deck is built to go. Turn 1 Braids, draw 3 cards. That's why we run stuff like Lion's Eye Diamond, like where we can just discard our hand and then we still get our 3 cards back.
Yeah, and the point of the deck is it's a mono black mid-ranged farm list. And we'll talk about what that means in a second and how we're
we should really
define
define farm.
We'll get to that in a second, but it's a mono black mid-range farm list that turbos out card advantage and it waits for the perfect moment to win at instant speed.
Yeah.
So that's key. So how does this mono black mid-range farm list, why is it a farm list?
Yeah, so we should really define farm because I know historically,
Right.
Historically, I mean cEDH hasn't been around for so long, but farm started out as Mad Farm, which was Timna Bruce, and they were farmers.
Yeah.
That's why people called it farm, and it's basically getting advantage off of creatures, and it has evolved into the whole getting your advantage off of your creatures. And I think going into this, calling it Braids Black Farm is really leaning into we're getting advantage off of one creature, Braids. And I know usually farm lists are multiple creatures getting advantage, but I mean, when you get so much card advantage off of one creature, we're calling it the Braids Black Farm because it farms Braids.
Correct, exactly. And the thing about it too is that Braids, like, she does farm by herself. She is a creature that farms, and if you look at her art, maybe over here, wherever we're putting the card, she's literally sucking people's minds. Like I love the art where she's like, they're like starting the ritual to like revive her or whatever. And she's just like siphoning their brains out.
Arisen Nightmare.
Like she's doing some farming, but she's farming people's minds. We could also call it Mind Farm. That'd be kind of cool too.
Mind Farm is kind of cool.
But it just doesn't.
But then I
fit.
think that's gonna lead into like jokes like, "Hey, did you hear about Braids Mind Farm?
Yeah,
Because Braids Mind Farming."
Yeah. Drop some suggestions in the comments. Right now, I do think Braids Black Farm is the most fitting because it is a play on Blue Farm. We are only in mono black, and so, like I was mentioning, that does have some pros and cons. One of the pros, like I said, is it does draw more cards faster than any other deck in the format.
Yeah.
So, how it does this, we should probably talk about what Braids actually does.
Yeah. So Braids.
Yes. Braids.
Pull up the card. Braids is 1 and 2 black for a legendary creature Nightmare, a 3/3. And she says, at the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice an artifact, creature, enchantment, land, or planeswalker. If you do, each opponent may sacrifice a permanent that shares a card type with it. For each opponent who does not, that player loses 2 life and you draw a card.
She pressures life totals too, bro.
Yeah, but I mean, the life total pressure does not matter unless they're at 2 life and they have to sack it.
I mean, if they're on Adnos, that's 1 less card. You know what I mean? Like it.
Yeah,
does
most of the time they're
come
going
up
to take the
for
2
sure.
damage. It is good for some situations, and if you come into that desperate situation where you just need to kill, I have been in that situation before where you're just either locked out or you need to kill the table, and you're just like, well, Braids has done a lot of incremental damage over the game. I'm just going to be swinging, and it works.
On average, she takes around 4 to 6 life away from each person.
Yeah,
In the course of a
I would
game.
say that. In the course of a game, it's anywhere from 4 to 6. I mean, yeah, on average that makes sense because 2 or 3 turns with Braids out. And I want to say 90% of the time they're not going to sack something.
No,
So
not
that you get that card.
not if you're sacking the right thing. And this deck sacrifices
Exactly.
artifacts, enchantments. Sometimes lands will get into that.
You're
But
not sacking creatures though.
That's why.
Rarely.
Right. That's why I think it's a valid pro to say that it does draw cards faster than any deck in the format. I think drawing.
You are
going
to
to
be drawing about 4 cards a turn
It's a
with Braids
ton.
and your draw step.
It's a ton, and the deck's capable of winning at any moment on the stack, including on top of opponents' win attempts. It's really designed to do that because we're getting the cards that are end step. We want to be able to use those cards right away. So working on that instant speed win game plan is really important. It has a really high density of flexible tutors. It's got the black tutors most
Best tutors in the
consistent.
format.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why black is the best support color in the format. There's an argument to be made to have it as the best color in the format, although I think blue kind of outshines it.
Blue may be the best color, but black is my favorite color in all of Magic.
I will say there is no argument when it comes to like support color. Like your secondary color, black is probably the best.
For sure. I mean,
Yeah.
Demonic Tutor. It's the best card in my deck for 2 extra mana.
Demonic Tutor is just an extra copy.
Yeah.
Vampire Tutor is an extra copy with a turn delay.
Yes, it's too good. It's too good.
Yeah.
And then you got the best tutors, you got the best reanimation effects, you got free removal spells.
Yeah.
Right. Very good. Some of the cons though is, yes, it does draw faster than Blue Farm, but because it's not Blue Farm and it's Black Farm, your overall card quality is going to be less because
Pretty
you
low.
only have access to black. You don't have access to any of the other colors. You just have access to that one color, so the overall card quality is going to be lower there.
Yeah.
Your instant speed interaction is limited to creature removal effects and graveyard hate only. We don't have any counter spells, okay? We have one that
we can run a counter spell, but we have that in the considering for now.
We'll
It's a
get
pet
to
card of
that.
mine. I will say, lower overall card quality because there are a lot of things that we want to do that, like, there are a couple of cards in here that are just to sack to Braids. Like, they have some kind of upside that we want, but it's very incremental. And the big thing about it is it's sack to Braids. And if anyone looks at it in a base form with no Braids, it looks like a horrible card. Why would you run that in cEDH?
And maybe we should look at some of those,
Yeah.
right? Like maybe we should look at some of those.
Maybe there are
cards.
some better options out there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll investigate that further. This is probably the biggest con.
Yeah.
And I hate that it has this. We gotta find a way to fix this because if this happens, the deck can have a hard time recovering. But it is less resilient to Silver Bullet stacks pieces. The big 3 are Grafdigger's Cage, which is the most common.
Yeah.
Null Rod's probably the second most common, and Leyline of the Void. They're the
Who's
main
running
3.
Leyline of the Way? Well, Keurig is actually.
Keurig runs Leyline.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is you don't see it as often.
Yeah.
Whereas TNT is running Null Rod now.
Yeah, but TNT is still in that zone where it's like you don't see as much of it because it tracks
Right.
as just a deck.
Would you put would you put Keurig below TNT? Because I would.
110%.
Yeah. Yeah.
110%.
So that's why I think
TNT used to be like the deck to play.
right.
And Keurig was never at that status, whereas TNT was like king of the format for a while.
Yeah, and I think too that like most of the time in a big tournament, I'm gonna see a TNT with Null Rod more than I would see a Keurig with Leyline of the
Yeah.
Void. So I do think that seeing a Null Rod is gonna be more common. But then again, I don't know if Talion's running Leylines now, right? Some
I
are.
don't think it is. It might be though, actually. Yeah.
I can
I
see
do know
why.
that it well. The issue with running Leyline and Talion is one of their combos is Mnemonic Betrayal with the Bloodship Ascension
Oh, that's right.
to just wipe their opponent's life totals. And they want cards in the graveyard for that. So I don't think they're going to run Leyline.
So out of the big
They
three,
would run Grafdiggers though.
right? Out of the big 3, we're gonna see Grafdiggers the most. Then we're gonna see Null Rod, and then we're expecting to see Leyline of the Void the least.
Yeah.
But any of these 3 pieces, our deck doesn't fold to 100%, but it's going to be hard for us to win.
We
around
have
those
our own
effects.
silver bullets against those silver
Yes,
bullet stacks pieces.
exactly.
Oh man. All right. I think getting into the how to play. I don't know if we Do we want to go over that right now, or do we want to go over?
We can go over just a brief how to play guide.
Yeah.
So in with this deck, there's gonna be 4 main phases. I mean, there's in cEDH in general, there's 4 main phases of the game. For those who aren't aware, there's the mulligan, which is really important. Counts as a phase. Resolving mulligans in turn order is also really important, especially if you're going.
If you're in a tournament, it really matters.
Going later on, can get knowing what is happening. Like if you see a snap keep from first seat, depending on what that deck is, that should inform how you mulligan. So knowing how to mulligan is a really big part of cEDH, I would argue. And I would say it is the first phase of the game. Then you have the early game, the mid game, and the late game. Those are kind of the 4 main stages of and then the primer here is going to go over how we play at each of these stages. So for the mulligan, in order for this list to function at its best, having a turn 1 Braids is where we want to be. Right?
Yeah, turn 2 at the very latest, depending on how your turn 1 looks.
Right.
Or if you've had to mull down to like 3. But turn 1 Braids is what you're going for, and you should mull for that unless you get the God Hand. And even then, if you see like Dark Red Necropotence, that's not the God Hand unless you have the Braids out.
Right. We'll go over that in a second too. So also another thing that I found when testing is that if you can get a turn 2 1 ring online, getting Braids out turn 3 is acceptable.
Or turn 1 1 ring.
Turn 1 1 ring, turn 2 Braids, or turn 2 1 ring, turn 3 Braids are both acceptable.
Yeah.
But the only time Braids can come out turn 3 is if we have another strong advantage engine coming out before that.
Such as the 1 ring.
Exactly, yeah. So that's how we're going to be mulliganing. The best hands are going to have 2 ingredients, a Braids caster and some form of non-land sacrifice fodder. Our favorite sacrifice fodder is Hopeless Nightmare.
Hopeless Nightmare is amazing.
Which is an enchantment for 1 black, and then when it enters, each opponent discards a card and loses 2 life, and then when it is put into a graveyard, you get to scry 2 after you draw the 3 cards from Braids. It's just great. And then Braids casters are just going to be cards that get her out really early. So the best examples are Jeweled Lotus and Dark Ritual.
And Lion's Eye Diamond.
Lion's Eye Diamond.
That's in the second level, I guess.
Yeah, because you have to discard your hand for Lion's Eye. Braids will refill you, so we are going to be doing that sometimes.
It's the only reason Lion's Eye's in the deck, really, is you want to get that turn 1 Braids out. It's a second Jewel Lotus for us.
That Cabal Ritual is an example of an option that early game for most decks wouldn't be as great because it's 2 mana to get 3 black mana. But for Braids, it's good because you can cast that turn 1 and that 3 mana becomes a Braids.
Exactly.
What more could you ask for? In the early game, it should be our goal to turbo out card advantage to draw as many cards with Braids as we can.
Because they have less things to sacrifice, so if you're going early game, you are just throwing things on the field, sacking them, drawing your cards, because you being that Braids player means you are at that position where you are having the first card advantage engine out, or the most efficient one out at the early game. So when it drops a turn 1 Ristic Study or a turn 1 Fish, people can play around it, give them maybe 1 or 2 cards. Braids, you slam that turn 1, you are drawing 3 cards on that turn, 3 cards on the next turn, and 3 cards on the turn after that. You want that. You really want that value early game.
Yeah, exactly. So your main goal is just to draw as many cards as possible. Sometimes you can go for the win attempt in the early game if it's before your opponents are set up.
Yeah.
And if they haven't got their engines online, Braids can turbo and win fast.
If you get that turn 1 Braids, that win attempt in hand, and then your opponent goes turn 2, I think I'm safe, tap out for the Smothering Tithe, go for it.
That's it. You're going to be drowning them in value in the early game, and that's where we want to be. By the time we've transitioned to mid game, it's like, okay, now at this point, we should have drawn anywhere between 6 to 9 cards.
Yeah.
That's just the reality. Mid game starts turn 3. Usually turn 3 or turn 4.
I'd say, because turn 1, 2, and 3 is the early game, or the quick decks are trying to go for win attempts there. I think once you hit turn 4, you're in mid game.
Yeah, so by turn 4, in an ideal scenario, you should have a win attempt set up. You may not know exactly what it's going to look like, but you should know, okay, I've got one of my lines in hand. I feel like I can assemble a reanimator pile. I feel like I have an instant speed reanimator. And in the mid game, it should be your goal to do one of 2 things. Number 1, be patient. You have it assembled. Just chill out, relax, wait for that big stack to resolve in mid game, where people are trying to go for their win, and there's this big stack full of counter spells and stuff.
Yeah.
Wait for that to resolve, and then that's when you do your instant reanimation spell to win on top of them. That's option 1. Option 2, and this is an option I go for as well, is winning on your turn under the protection of a defense grid, which is going to make all of your opponent's spells cost 3 more to cast as long as it's your turn. If it doesn't work out for you, just sack defense grid to Braids. You don't want to give them that protection.
Defense grid sucks in other decks, but
this deck is quite good.
Defense grid pass sucks in other decks, but if you get like you play that defense grid and was like, oh, he's going for it. Silence. You're like, well, I got silenced. Sack defense grid to Braids, draw 3 cards.
Yep.
That's like the worst that comes across if you get stopped on a defense grid turn.
It's very, very, very forgiving defense grid deck. We're running Boseiju, who shelters all as a land, just to make something uncounterable. I remember there was a game we played where I casted an uncounterable Peer into the Abyss, and you were playing mono blue counterspell tribal.
And I was like, I'm sure I totally just whiffed on the Boseiju, and I was just like, okay, whatever he plays, I'll stop him. And I'm sure it's not just one spell that wins in the game. Then you peer, and I'm like, well, now he's got a lot of spells.
Yes. Yeah, so sometimes you can just do it. And then Grief is like a preemptive force of will. So Grief is a nigh uncounterable option to just drop it down.
See what they got.
And see what they got and make them discard. So either discard, either win on your turn with protection, or win on top of your opponent's turn is the way you want to go with this. If the game has dragged on into the late game, it's likely that one of 3 things have happened. Either Braids got removed the turn cycle she was cast, and you weren't able to farm enough advantage to piece together a win for the mid game. The game just got stacked into oblivion, like everybody's got a bunch of stacks pieces and it's hard for you or anyone else to win. Or you mistimed your winning moment, maybe you got a little too greedy, maybe you got a little bit impatient and you got stopped.
Which does happen.
It does happen.
It does happen. You're playing mono black, you're not going to be able to protect yourself. If you go for it at the wrong moment and you get stopped, you get stopped.
Be patient, farm that advantage, and really wait for the perfect moment, the perfect window to go for that win.
Yeah, that's the whole deck is just really look at the table, and you need to understand everything about that's going on in the game, and just try to find that perfect moment. And you're not going to find it all the time. It may look like a perfect moment, you go for it, and they got it. And if they have it, they have it. It happens. But the deck is resilient enough to make it into that late game and actually attempt wins in the late game.
And another thing, too, is sometimes you have multiple reanimation spells in your hand, and you'll go, well, let me cast a reanimation spell right here. And let me try to go for it right now. And then they counter it, you get stopped. Doesn't matter. You got a bunch more in your hand. Maybe you sack some into Braids and draw into another one. So you can present win after win after win. If it goes to the late game, just be patient. The old plan is the new plan. Continue to farm advantage with Braids. You're going to get there. Just be patient.
Yeah, you get stopped, you always have that fallback plan of just drawing 3 cards a turn, which isn't that bad.
Yeah. So, some lines in this deck. We'll go through this pretty quickly here. We got 3 plans. We got Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C. These are the 3 combos that are going to be winning us the game.
Yeah.
So the first one is going to be with Trazen the Infinite. We can put him here.
Trazen the Infinite, man.
Yeah, bro. So this is the
no
the
deck is
spicy
playing
one.
this.
No, but this deck loves this card, and I'll explain why. So basically, Trazen, as long as so he's 4 and 2 black, so you're never casting him.
You don't. I mean, you could late game, but you don't really want to because you want him to have haste for your combos.
Yes, you don't. He doesn't have to have haste, but it's preferred, of course.
Yeah.
And then he has Death Touch and he has Prismatic Gallery. So everyone knows what that does, right?
Yep.
So moving on.
So our next creature in the combo.
So Prismatic Gallery, which is as long as I love these little keywords that are unique to specific cards. As long as he's on the battlefield, he has all activated abilities of all artifacts in your graveyard. And so the 2 artifacts you want in there are Phyrexian Devourer and Walking Ballista. Phyrexian Devourer is going to let you exile cards from the top of your deck to put a number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to the mana value of the things you've exiled. So you can just exile your whole deck, put a bunch of +1/+1 counters on Trazen, then remove them with Walking Ballista's 3rd ability. Second
Is it the
activated
third ability?
It is his third ability. His first ability is technically he enters a battlefield with X plus with counters on it, like casting cost. Yeah, his second activated ability, I should say.
Yeah.
But you remove all the counters with Trazen, and then you should have enough to shoot the table down from there. There are situations where you won't, like let's say you've just peered into the abyss and then drew your deck.
Then you can't really kill them with the Franks of our Walking Ballista line, which there is a backup for that.
Yeah, you want to explain that?
Yeah, so the backup for that one is a Pilipala line. So essentially, what you do is you want to have Pilipala and any mana rock that produces 2 or more mana in your graveyard with Trazen. So Trazen's on the field, or you reanimate him onto the field. Mm-hmm. You have Pilipala, which is 2 mana, 1/1 flyer, artifact creature. Basically, what matters is it has a activated ability that says pay 2, untap it, and add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So, with any rock that produces 2 or more mana, you can tap Trazen for that much mana, use that mana to untap it with Pilipala's ability, float infinite black, and then use that to put into Walking Ballista's third ability.
First activated ability.
Second ability, first activated ability, which is pay 4, put a counter on it.
Yep.
And then you shoot the table, taking all your counters off.
Yep, pew pew. And Trazen needs to have haste. Obviously,
Trazen does need to have haste for this one, particular because you're tapping and untapping it.
Goryo's Vengeance can give him haste, because it can reanimate a legendary creature card from your graveyard. At its speed, it gains haste until end of turn. Same thing with Shallow Grave, reanimates the top card of your graveyard, which is him. And then Corpse Dance does the exact same thing. They all give him haste to do this. So that's going to be Plan A here. Plan B is going to be your top deck combo. That's going to be Bolas's Citadel, Aetherflux Reservoir, and Sensei's Divining Top.
Man, this combo used to be in like every black deck. Or every mono or 2-color black deck, I want to say. You don't see it as much anymore. I mean, it's still there because Bolas Citadel is a very powerful card. Aetherflux Reservoir, if you have some other way of gaining life. Although with these, it's fine as long as you're getting both.
Right.
And Sensei's Top, it sees play outside of this combo with other combos, but it's all top deck manipulation combos that you really see Sensei's in, unless you're playing a control deck with counterbalance.
Yeah, so Sentop is in this list because there's moments where we want some of the cards Braids would give us at our end step right away. Yeah. So it's a card we want to be running already. Bolas's Citadel is just awesome. Like, just being able to look at the top card and just cast it is just sweet. So the way the combo works, is you're going to be looking at the top card, and then you can cast it with your life if you want to, and if you have Sensei's Top, you can just draw that card, put top on top, and then cast Sensei's Divining Top from the top of your library through Bolas's Citadel. Yeah. And you can do that to draw your deck. Of course, each time you're doing this, you are paying a life to draw the card to recast the Sensei's Divining Top, but that's why we have Aetherflux Reservoir. Yeah. That's going to be our
gain your life back.
Yeah. You basically, Aetherflux is whenever you cast a spell, you gain a life for each spell you have cast this turn. So that's going to just gain you a whole bunch of life as you keep casting Sensei's over and over, or whatever. Sometimes I'll cast a Tutor instead of the Sensei's Top off.
You just keep looking at the top, seeing what you have, cast it if you want it.
Yeah. Sink your life into Aetherflux's ability and kill people. It's very easy to understand. The Legend combo.
Now this combo is sick.
I love this combo. When you assemble this, it feels like Exodia. Like
this is Exodia right here.
Because they're all things you want to run anyway. It's not easy to assemble, but it is a good backup plan if you can't cast spells from your library or reanimate things from your graveyard.
If you have a Grafdigger's Cage out and you have no way of removing it in hand, and you incidentally have these cards, you just assemble this combo, and it'll allow you to draw your deck, find your answers, remove the Grafdiggers, and then go with Plan A.
Yeah, so it's
B. Yeah, I guess technically it's Trazen with the Pilipala is what you're going to go for if you're drawing your deck.
It's Plan C. It's 3 legendary creatures we want to run anyway. Shouldered the Apocalypse. We know what this does.
Yep.
We got Kirik.
Another card that's pretty common. Yeah, Shieldred. You'll gain your life back from drawing cards. You'll deal 2 damage. It's a piece you want already. Kirik, reducing the mana for our spells is amazing. Paying life instead of black is great.
Yeah, it turns out Phyrexian mana is just so busted that even in the new Phyrexian set, they didn't have any of it in the casting costs. They were all in the ability costs.
They never put it in the casting cost for the latest Phyrexian set?
I don't think so. Because it's too broken. Like, it's so busted.
It's always 2 life. You're never playing that mana.
No. And then you got Villas Broker of Blood, which, I mean, have you ever reanimated a Villas before?
Yes,
It feels
and it's amazing.
so good. It feels so good. Yeah,
1 mana, draw 8.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yes. It's very nice. And so the way the combo works is you're going to be paying... So Villas' ability, activated abilities, for those who don't know, it's pay a black and pay 2 life. Target creature gets -1/-1. But his second ability is what matters, and it's whenever you lose life, draw that many cards. So how that works is with Shouldered, with Keurig, that black mana becomes Phyrexian black. We pay 4 life. His second ability will see that being lost and draws 4 cards. Shouldered will then gain us 8 life from that, which is then the life we can then spend to sink into Villas, and we can do this over and over to draw our entire deck.
1 life technically each time you draw a card, which is amazing.
Yep, and Keurig's a mana machine, we can cast our deck. Yeah, very, very simple. Cool if you assemble it. It's nice just because it's all creatures we want to run. Anyways. Okay.
There are a few through lines to get to our combos.
Yeah.
Our first one is Hoarding Broodlord, Peer into the Abyss, which you see in a lot of decks anyways that want this. It's basically you get Hoarding Broodlord onto the battlefield. 9 times out of 10 it's reanimating him. I have cast him once though because Convoke allows that if you have enough creatures on the board.
Oh yeah, he has Convoke himself.
Yes.
I forget about that.
Right.
That's so
People
good.
don't think about that all the time.
Yeah.
But getting the Hoarding Broodlord out onto the battlefield, you get your Saw in half, you saw him in half, you get your sacrifice into your Peer, sacrifice him for the mana, Peer, and then go from there.
Yeah, that gives us access to everything we need, and then from there we just need to cast our handy dandy Scourge Familiar, and then...
So Scourge Familiar we should probably go over because that's not a common card.
Sure.
That is 4 and a black for a creature Phyrexian Imp, a 3/2 flyer that has 1 simple ability outside of flying. Discard a card, add black mana to your mana pool.
Yeah.
So you just ramp him out there, and then half your deck's in your hand, so you got all types of cards that just turn into black mana to cast what you need.
Yeah, after testing, we found that Scourge Familiar made the Hoarding Broodlord Peer into the Abyss line so much easier. Anytime we peer, we know we're always going to have mana. We're never going to whiff. We can tutor this if it's not in our hand from the peer, so it's all good. This is my favorite name of the line in here, the Necropotence Turbo God Hand line. This one's one of...
It's funny because this is probably a turn 2 hand.
Yeah.
This is probably...
This is definitely something you can do to just go for it. You cast Necropotence. You're going to be paying life 25 to 30.
Yeah, you're paying almost your entire life total into this.
Yeah, and then you go to end step, sack it to Braids. You need Braids first, by the way.
Braids needs to be on board, or somehow you get... Like you say you look at your hand and you got Jeweled Lotus, Dark Ritual, Land, Necro, you're set.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah. So you get Braids out there, then cast your Necro, you draw a bunch, activate enough to exile a bunch, and then when you go to end step, you stack the triggers such that you put the Necro cards in your hand first, then you sack the Necropotence to Braids ability, draw 3 more cards, and then when you go to cleanup, you'll discard into the graveyard rather than exile.
Yeah.
And then from there, you should assemble your Reanimator pile.
Because you've got about 20 cards in your graveyard at this point.
Yeah.
You should discard your combo pieces, and then you can just reanimate it. If you have extra mana, you can do it at instant speed and win the game.
And if it's early enough, you can just wait a turn cycle, because what the hell?
What the hell?
Sometimes you can just go fast. Then you got the Buried Alive piles. So you actually fixed the Buried Alive pile.
Our Buried Alive pile was a little rough beforehand. Because you don't want to put your Trazyn combo in the graveyard immediately.
Unless you can reanimate it right away. So I've done it before, where I had 6 mana. I had a... Necromancy in hand, which can reanimate Trazyn at instant speed. Yeah. And so what I did was I went for the Buried Alive, and I put the Trazyn combo with the Phyrexian Devour and Walking Ballista in right away, and then somebody Otawara'd, and then in response to the Otawara, I Necromancied Trazyn in 1 instantly.
Nice.
So if you can win at instant speed or can win very quickly, have the reanimation, then go for the Trazyn combo. The Trazyn Trazyn, Phyrexian Devourer, and Walking Ballista.
Yeah, but if you can't, the Buried Alive pile is actually really good.
I like it.
We have... You want to grab Hoarding Broodlord for your Peer into the Abyss line. You want to grab Disciples of Gix, which if you reanimate it can get you your Trazyn line in the graveyard. But it's safe, it's protected, so that way if they exile your graveyard, you don't feel too bad. And then you get Villas, because if you have just straight up reanimate, drawing 8 cards is pretty good.
Yeah, and then if any of these pieces go away, your deck's main plan A
is still alive.
Is still alive.
You're not screwed out of the game by 1 endurance or 1 rest in peace.
Yeah, you get rid of my Hoarding Broodlord. Okay, cool. I'll reanimate this Disciples. Get my combo right away.
Exactly.
When Disciples enters, you get to search for 3 artifacts, put it in the bin.
Yeah.
So it's a second Buried Alive. Very nice. And then Villas, same thing. There's times when you feel like, okay, if I reanimate this Disciple, Hoarding Broodlord's exiled, I can't. If I'm no rotted, for example, so going for the Disciples line isn't good.
If we're no rotted, you're going for that Villas, you're going for that Broodlord.
The card draw for sure. Yeah, so good pile was gonna help set you up there. The last one is gonna be the Insidious Dreams top deck assembly line. So
this one's a little rough on mana, I will say.
It can be, but here's the deal. Okay, you only have 2 requirements for this guy. You have to have Insidious Dreams in hand and a way to produce 3 and 3 black on the following turn. You may not be able to produce it right now, but 3 and 3 black on the following turn, so 6 mana. So basically how it works is Insidious Dreams is like a faux Adnaz in the deck because you're casting it during an opponent's end step to win on your turn. So how that works is kind of. So it's the same play pattern as Adnaz, but it's obviously less powerful. The thing, though, is if you can resolve the Insidious Dreams, you're probably going to resolve your Bolas Citadel, which is what this thing assembles.
And if you can't resolve Insidious Dreams, it feels so bad because discarding is part of the cost.
Right, which is why I say that make sure it's safe to do so. This is why this is like kind of a risky one. It's a high risk, high reward strategy, so just be careful. But basically, what Insidious Dreams will do for you is it's a 3 and a black for an instant spell. As an additional cost, you gotta discard X cards from your hand. As an additional cost, you have to discard. But you search your library for X cards and put them on top of your library in any order. Oh, my dog's whining at me. She's crying.
She doesn't like the Insidious Dreams line either.
No, she's crying because she has to discard cards as an additional cost. The thing about that is, though, that once you've discarded the cards, you have to discard at least 3 to go for the top deck line we talked about. Bolas' Citadel, what's it called? The Aetherflux Reservoir and Centop. So you're putting that on top. Then, you have to discard at least 3. If you can afford to discard a 4th, you can go for Defense Grid. And then protect that a little bit easier.
If you resolve a Bolas Citadel, you don't need the Defense Grid really, because who's going to let you resolve a Bolas Citadel?
Well, here's the thing. They might have interaction for everything but artifacts, because like a Swan Song hits enchantments, instants, and sorceries. And when I'm going for my Reanimator win or something, I want more protection there, or maybe I want something there.
I mean, if you want to Insidious Dream just for 1 card in the Defense Grid, because I mean, if you're going for the top deck pile, you don't need. You only cast artifacts that whole turn.
You definitely don't need it. But let's say you have a land in your hand, you don't need. Just discard that thing just for the Defense Grid, because why not? Like, I don't know. Well. You never know what your opponents are going to do. I don't know. I always want to err on the side of caution with that one. Okay. So now that we've talked about what the list is trying to do, I think it's time we go into our considering board, because maybe we're missing something. And while I got you here, I want to see if you had any opinions on what you would change about the list. Now that our audience understands, they can actually comment on our stuff and see if they.
I know we have slight differences, right? Right. Lists. So our considering boards are kind of merged into this one considering board on this list in particular, because this is the main list.
Right. Exactly. So I think we could go over it, and then maybe if you have any ideas, leave them in the comments. Let us know
exactly
what you think
we
about
really
it.
We really want to know your guys' opinion on the deck and any changes you guys might want to see, or what you would suggest.
And, we always encourage, testing and exploration. Test out some of these in our considering board for yourself and see what swaps you like. But right now, let's get into it. So, first of all, the creatures. The first thing in our considering board is Blood Pet. Yes.
Blood Pet is like the only dork in black. Yes. Blood Pet's interesting. You want it to be able to sack the Braids late game, but you don't want to sack creatures. it really is in the considering work, because like it could potentially be a turn 2 Braids. And that's what we want if we can't get that turn 1.
Sure.
So it makes our mulligans a little bit easier, but it does nothing else for us.
Right, and it is a dork, right? It is the black dork. But you want to know what else operates just like a dork? Jeweled Amulet.
Yeah.
And that's free, because Jeweled Amulet is free to cast, and then you can tap a mana and then tap it, so it's like you're paying the cost of a dork, and you get to use that mana next turn.
Yeah.
So maybe Jeweled Amulet's a better option in that slot. The question is, do we want 2 dork-like effects in the deck?
Yeah.
Right.
I don't think we need them, because we had Blood Patent originally, but then we found Lion's Eye Diamond as our second Jewel Lotus.
Yeah, that felt way better.
It's so much better.
Yeah. No, I think that seems good. And then you added this today, too, another creature.
The Hope of Gearper. It's a 1 mana legendary artifact creature, Thopter, flying. It has this ability that says sacrifice it until your next turn. Target opponent who was dealt damage this turn by Hope of Gearper can't cast non-creature spells. It's in the deck. It can be a silence for the blue player if you're in like a 1 blue player pod. Or silence whatever player has the most open mana.
But you have to wait a turn. And
You have to wait a turn.
And it's very Bowmastersable.
It is very Bowmastersable, but I don't think it's very high on the priority list of what you're going to Bowmasters.
If somebody casts a Hope of Gearper and I have a Bowmaster and it's just as easy as 1 trigger to kill it, yeah, it's gonna go, because if they're swinging at me to lock me out from interacting, and it's not just interacting, it's literally super oppressive. It says what is it? It can't cast non-creature spells until your next turn. Yeah. So that means during my turn, if I'm the blue player in this scenario, I can't cast any non-creature spells. That means no advantage engines. That means no.
Unless you're playing Blue Farm, I mean, your advantage is in your command zone.
Sure, part of it, right? But they're still running mystics and mystics. They can't do anything, and they're gonna want to do that because that's what they're playing. And you know, if I'm on say Thrasios Dargo, I can cast Thrasios and use him as an advantage engine. But no, I want my One Ring. I want my cEDH players are super greedy.
I could see how it would be killed. I mean, this is all on the hypothetical that they have a Bowmasters, which is very common in the format. The Hope of Gearper being that extra silence effect is kind of nice, though, for the list. Because all we have is defense grade, really. Right. Protection is really nice.
And in the Thrasios Dargo example, like, I don't have access to Bowmasters, right? But I'm just saying that if I did, like, I just don't see Hope of Gearper sticking around.
You don't see it playing it 1 turn and then hoping it sticks to then swing and silence somebody.
Here's what I see Hope of Gearper as, mostly. It's a 1 mana Braid sack that could potentially be a silence effect. But most of the time, it's going to be that 1 mana Braid sack, which is an artifact creature.
The issue with that is the creature type line, because Braid says sack something that shares a type with it so they can sack a creature.
The other thing that we have in that slot would be something like Manifold Key and Voltaic Key, and those are just so good. Like, those can untap our artifacts that produce 2 or more colorless mana. They also can untap the One Ring, which is massive in this list.
They can also untap a Wishclaw Talisman.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
For the extra Wishclaw, so you tutor twice 1 turn for 3 mana.
Yeah, you can put 2 activations with those. So the question is, if we were to include, Hope of Gearper, I do think we'd have to cut one of these effects, and I don't think we want less than 2. It's too good.
The keys are really good, especially in this deck where we're running all those huge mana producing artifacts as well as the One Ring, as well as Wishclaw. Yeah, I don't think we can cut a key for it. I don't think there's any other slots to cut for it, because I mean, like, you have your Jewel Amulet, but mana's are different.
Yeah, that's a dork. Its role. I just don't believe Hope of Gearper is gonna give us enough advantage.
I want to test it out.
Okay.
I will probably test it out in my list.
You'll swap out a key for it?
Probably. Okay. See how it works.
Okay. Let me know how, and you know what? When you do, let me know how often you actually get its ability off.
How often I silence somebody.
Because if you're doing that often and cutting a key is worth it, then I'll do it. But here's the thing with the keys for me. I'm often with the keys able to untap something. A Mana Crypt, a Soul Ring, something.
I mean, with all of our mana producing artifacts, you're often able to untap something.
and at worst you just sack it to Braids.
The silence might be so worth it because we're in mono black.
On paper, it's worth it. If this
On
thing
paper,
were,
it's really worth it.
If this thing were a 1/2, that'd be a very different conversation. And if it could do it the turn it came down, that'd
It's
be
legendary.
Very
It should
different.
be a 1/2.
Exactly.
What's going on?
But it's not.
We got Delighted Affling out here is not legendary and it's a 1/2.
Yeah, and why is it not a vehicle? Like, why is it a creature at all? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
It's automatically a creature.
it's a Thopter. Yeah, it's a Thopter, so I guess it is. But
Alright, what else we got? We got Shambling Ghast.
yes, Shambling Gas is another option for
This
Braids
is
set.
your spice pick that you're thinking about.
This is my spice pick. Originally, I had it in because, think about this, right? It gives us 2 Braids activations in a way, at worst. So you play the Shambling Ghast, you sack it to Braids, it gives you a treasure token that you could then on the following turn sack. So it guarantees you 2 Braids.
We should probably
sacks.
talk about what Shambling Ghast is actually, because I don't know how many people
Sure.
know about this common from
So
Adventures in the Forgotten Realms.
yeah, it's a 1 black for a 1/1 zombie. When it dies, you get to choose one, either Brave the Stench or Search the Body. So
we
people know what those
know what that does.
Yeah, everyone knows. so no, you can Brave the Stench, target creature and opponent controls this neg1, and then search the body, create a treasure token. Right, so that's what it does. So my thinking is with this, it can give you 2 Braids activations reliably on 1 card because you sack the Shambling Ghast to get the treasure. You can sack the treasure to Braids and do it again, or just use the treasure for extra mana, or you can do none of those things and kill a Bowmasters if you want. And Bowmasters is a big problem for this deck.
It really is.
So
if you're going for the pure line, you're just gonna die.
yeah, and then also any Braids,
Braids activation, 3 draws, kills Braids.
Braids trigger, not activation, but
yeah.
You see what I mean, right? You're gonna draw 3 cards, Braids is dead. So Shambling Ghast is a way to tech against Bowmasters. It has a ton of flexibility. If we were to put this in, we'd have to find a slot for it amongst our sort of low quality Braids fodder. Yeah.
It would most likely fall into the slot of Contagion, I want to say.
Oh, interesting. Maybe. But then again, Contagion also kills Oppo.
Yes, and Contagion's free.
And
Free versus 1 mana is a lot different.
We don't need it. We have enough Braids spot. And we're not going to cut Hopeless Nightmare for this. Hopeless Nightmare is devastating to people. But speaking of discard, you added Brain Maggot to our list.
So this is running Cured decks.
And what does this do? Okay, what does this do?
So it's 1 and a black for an enchantment creature insect that's a 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it. Exile that card until Brain Maggot leaves the battlefield.
That's the part I don't like.
Until it leaves, because then you don't want to sack it to Braids.
Yes.
It's just ripping a card out of someone's hand, and then you can't sack this thing to Braids. Most of the time you don't want to because it's a creature, which can be sacked by your opponents, but the issue is that when it leaves the battlefield, they get the card back.
Yeah, it's a 2 mana investment that does next to nothing aside from discarding 1 card, and I think that with Defense Grid in this list, it might actually do enough for us. Maybe, and also too, I find that Grief does this job as well.
Grief does it better for free.
Grief does it better for free for sure, but do we need to double up on the effect? Are you thinking?
I think if we were to double up on the effect, I would prefer Hope over Brain Maggot, in all honesty.
Okay.
Because if Hope does stick, that's a silence, versus Brain Maggot, you see their hand and you see 2 forces.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah, no, that's
you see
definitely
both like negation and will and a bunch of blue cards in hand. You're like, well, never mind.
Yeah, I agree. I think you should test Hope and cut one of the artifacts into one of the keys. Yeah, and let me know if you can reliably activate this and it protects you and wins you a game. Then I will try it. But that's why it's good to have 2. That's why it's good to maybe
have 2 people playing it.
Exactly, man. Yeah. Cheers. Moving on to the sorceries, we have Bubbling Muck.
Bubbling Muck.
I'm not convinced here for this one.
Okay, so Bubbling Muck is 1 black for a sorcery. Until end of turn, whenever a player taps a swamp for mana, it produces an additional black. It is High Tide in black. I can see why you're not convinced, because usually we only have a few lands with Braids.
And we only need 2 lands.
My issue is that it's sorcery speed.
Yeah.
But having that additional mana, say we're going for a pure Zebus line, and we're getting pretty short on mana, we need to be able to tutor the discard outlet. Now I'm blanking on the name of the card. It's such a bad card. It's only used in this deck.
Rigor Apprentice?
No. The 5
We
mana.
can talk about that. It will read the primer if you want to know about Overeager Penance and why.
It's the 5 mana discard card out of black.
Oh, Scourge Familiar.
Scourge Familiar,
Yes.
yes.
Mhm.
So, Bowling Black I think is good for the pure Nativus line. Makes it a little bit easier so that you can make all your lands tap for additional, all your swamps tap for an additional black, and then you can tutor and play the Scourge Familiar pretty easily with that.
Yeah, the thing is, once we've drawn half our deck, Cabal Ritual gets us a Scourge. And Cabal Ritual is not contingent upon lands.
Yeah.
Also,
I can see that.
also Keurig, he doesn't cast Scourge Familiar directly, but he can also make it easy to cast all the ritual effects and tutor effects we need to get Scourge out there.
Yeah.
I'll say this: I've Peered Abyss a lot of times to win this, and one of the main through lines I use is the Hoarding Brood or Peered Abyss line.
Yeah,
Assemble.
it's probably the easiest.
Exactly. Once that happens, I have no problem casting Scourge. Ever. We have so many free
I haven't
rocks.
really either, but
we
I
have
mean,
so
if
many
you're
free
in
rocks too. Right?
I mean, yeah, I could see that. It was just to make it easier, but I don't think Bubbling Muck is really needed.
Right, and I don't think we need to make it easier like you're saying, because I think it's easy enough. I think Scourge Familiar does the job enough for us.
This card is...
Scheming Symmetry. This card has overperformed so much for me, dude. I've been testing
I
Scheming
haven't cast it
Symmetry.
yet. I put it in the deck and I haven't been able to get to it yet.
It's sick. And I know just the cut for it too. So this was recommended to me by a friend. Shout out to Zev. He said that as he was testing, because we have some of our friends play, this stuff in paper, people who want to, try cEDH and stuff like that, who play other formats or who used to play cEDH and are getting back into it. One of our buddies was trying out my paper list of braids, and he said, man, you need more tutors. There were so many moments during the game where I wanted just a tutor. Mm-hmm. And yes, Scheming Symmetry for 1 black, it tutors to the top of your deck, which you could then draw with braids, but an opponent gets to do it as well. What I didn't realize is that this is a 2-card combo with Opposition Agent. Mm-hmm. Not only that, it also works with our top deck line. So for example, if you just cast a Bolas of Citadel and don't have the Aetherflux, but you have the Centop, this thing can help find you that last piece, or help you find the Centop if you just want to raw dog a Bolas of Citadel.
Yeah, and the fact that you draw the card first with braids makes this card so much better than it usually is. Mm-hmm. I mean, Scheming Symmetry is basically just another Imp Seal in this deck. Mm-hmm. You draw your card. And you're
getting the card first before your opponent in this list. Yeah, like a Tymna would. Yeah.
Yeah. Normally, what you do with Scheming Symmetry is you just target the last opponent in turn order before you use Scheming Symmetry, your instant reanimation. If you have your spell in hand or your stuff in the graveyard, you draw your reanimation spell and then you reanimate in your end step or in someone else's turn.
Also, can we put the alternate art?
I'll put the secret layer up there.
Shout out to Alexander Kabazi who did this art. This art is awesome.
It's really sick.
So Alexander, if you are watching somehow by some force of the universe, you did an awesome job with this card, man. Like, no, for real. Like, this is sick. And every time I draw it, I have a smile on my face because it's just so good. I want to put this in the list right now, and I actually do have a cut for it based on some stuff that I've been testing. So I have not liked Incarnation Technique. Incarnation Technique's 4 and a black, and has Demonstrate, which says when you cast a spell, you can copy it, and if you do, you choose an opponent to also copy it. It lets you mill 5, then return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. The point of this card is that if the card you reanimate first is a Disciples of Gix,
then you win the game.
Because you get to tutor your combo. If it's not a Disciples of Gix, this is a 5-mana card that rots in your hand. And maybe I just want a tutor, bro.
5 mana is too big of an investment for a gamble.
Yeah. Would you want to do this swap?
Yeah.
Do you feel okay about that? Okay. I
considering and then throw in the
throw in the scheming because it's been really doing well for me. And that card I just mentioned, which I already forgot its name.
Incarnation Technique.
Yeah, who cares? It doesn't do anything.
Now this next sorcery is really interesting. This is one of your favorite cards, I would say.
I want to run this card so bad. It's Praetor's Grasp, y'all. It's 1 and 2 black. You can search an opponent's library for a card and exile it face down. Then that player shuffles, of course they do. but you may look at it and play it for as long as it remains exiled. What this card does not say is that you may not spend any mana as though it were mana of any color to cast.
I really wish it said that.
If it said that, easy include. But the thing is, because we are only producing black mana, and because a lot of things we want are red or blue
or white, or if you go for that silence off somebody,
or white, yeah, anything, like it just, we can't cast it. And then the worst part is usually decks like this that run Praetor's Grasp can also run Tainted Pact to grab a Thoracle and do it. Thoracle, then Tainted Pact, but we can't run Tainted Pact because our mana base has to be swamps.
In mono black, it's kind of rough to do a Tainted Pact land base.
Exactly. Now, I get it. You can take Praetor's Grasp for some protection, right? But then again, is a 3 mana counterspell worth it? Is a 3 mana Fierce Guardianship worth it?
Sometimes it is.
At sorcery speed?
So it's different turns. So it's taking a turn off to Praetor's Grasp for the Pact of Negation. Hold that, and then use that as protection for your next turn win attempt.
It is slow.
Or if you have 5 mana open, 3 of it goes to this, 2 of it goes to the instant speed reanimator, and you have that protection piece. Which
that's
isn't
true.
super hard to get to.
Here's the thing. Winning off of 5 mana is rarely what happens.
Yeah.
Usually what happens is we sack lands sometimes.
Yeah.
That means we have to be willing to win.
I love sacking lands.
Yeah, me too. It feels good because nobody will do it with you, and you just get so many cards. But that's my point. Is like you're not able to generate enough mana to cast this and an instant reanimation spell. A lot of the times, usually it's just 1 or 2 mana. That's all you need. 3 at the most. And that's, I really want to run Praetor's Grasp, you guys. I seriously do. The problem is I cannot find a viable cut that would be good because we have a lot of good tutors, we have a lot of good reanimation spells, we have a lot of good braids fodder. And
there's a lot of things.
It's just too slow, tempo wise. It's just too slow to spend 3 black to get 1 counter spell. To cast on the following turn is just way too slow of a play pattern.
We
maybe
cut Toxic potentially for it.
Well, we could. That is something we could do.
Because Toxic doesn't really help our game plan. It just removes some stacks pieces that would be throwing us off.
It doesn't help our game plan. What it does do is it helps stop another person that would disrupt our game plan in the future. So this deck can fold sometimes in the mid game to decks with heavy board states that are drawing a lot of cards off their Tymnas.
Yeah.
Because we want to be the deck that draws cards. We don't want Tymna to get any cards. So we want to wipe Tymna's field. We will get outvalued in the long game if people are allowed to have their board states.
Yeah, because I mean, our board state is essentially just braids and mana.
Yes.
90% of the time.
Yes. So being able to Toxic Deluge, to wipe the field, and then go for the win is usually preferred.
Yeah. I agree with you. I'm just thinking in 3 mana slots.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's not a lot of slots that we could just cut.
I also think it's too slow a play pattern. I also don't think we get enough value off it. Like decks that don't have access to blue, or even Orzhov decks will run it. I actually have an Orzhov deck built, if you follow me on Moxfield, that does use Praetor's Grasp because it can have Tainted Pact. That list can Tainted Pact, so you can get Thoracle, Tainted Pact, and win that way, or grab a Dockside, and it can make multiple colors. But in mono black lists, it's hard to make those extra colors you would need to cast those value spells, like the Underworld Breaches or the Docksides that you can get in.
We only have 3 rocks that produce any color.
Right.
And so we'd have to rely on one of those to cast like a Dockside if we were to take it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not working out.
I wish it could, but just the more I think about it, I just feel like I can't justify it.
Slaughter Pact. So I go back and forth on whether or not I want Slaughter Pact in this deck. 0 mana instant, destroy target non-black creature. At the beginning of your next upkeep, pay 2 and a black. If you don't, you lose the game. It is a 3 mana kill spell essentially because the only stacks pieces that we're killing that are non-black are oof. Like, the only stacks piece creatures.
Drannith?
Archon. Drannith we don't care about. If we're going for Slaughter Pact,
true.
we're trying to kill something that stops us from winning and then win that same turn. We don't want to pay the upkeep cost.
Yeah, I will say Drannith does disrupt the Yawgmoth's Will line. Yawgmoth's Will is a resource that you can use in this deck.
It's our breach.
Yeah.
It's a recursion tool. It's our Eternal Witness.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's fine.
but Slaughter Pact...
On roids. It's an Eternal Witness on steroids.
Yeah. I think
can do so much.
Slaughterback just doesn't do enough. It doesn't kill the things we want it to kill, like a Dothy
or Bowmasters.
or a Bowmasters.
Yeah, but what does is this card.
Yeah.
This card I've been testing a lot is Cut Down. Now I know people will say, why not run Fatal Push instead? I'll tell you why. Because a lot of modern folks will say...
Or Tragic Slip.
Or Tragic Slip, exactly.
Tragic Slip's actually... That makes me want to put it into considering.
Here's the thing. Here's why I wouldn't do it. cEDH is a high variance format. That means that part of the game is controlling for that variance. That means you need cards that do consistently the thing when you need to do them reliably all the time.
Yeah.
So Tragic Slip, it only works if something has died this turn.
Oh, it's Morbid. It's not Revolt.
Yes, sometimes.
Okay, yeah, Tragic Slip's so much worse, because I'm just thinking sack something to Braids and then Tragic Slip for 13.
Right.
You have to sack a creature specifically for
Exactly. And so sometimes we need to get rid of the Oppo, but a creature hasn't died.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and then same thing with Fatal Push. Fatal Push, if a permanent has left, you can destroy something with 4 CMC or less.
Yeah.
So that's
a lot easier in Braids, but Cut Down is just more reliable.
Exactly. And that's the thing too with Fatal Push is yes, Fatal Push can destroy something 4 CMC or less rather than 3, but the thing we want to be killing is Opposition Agent,
Dranith, which is already 2 of those, so...
Yeah.
But 3 CMC rather than 2. It's just Oppo most of the time.
Yeah, because Opposition Agent
Archon's like the one stacks piece creature that's being played a lot still.
Yeah, any rule of law creature, it's all 3 CMC, and Fatal Push gives us 2, is my point. The only time it can destroy a 3 CMC creature is if a permanent has left, and that will not always happen when you need it to happen.
Yeah.
So that's why I have liked Cut Down. The card we're running in that slot right now to get rid of all those problem things is Massacre. This card is a high-risk, again, high-variance format. Yeah. When it's good, it's really good. When it's bad, it's really bad. It's like a toxic relationship, okay?
Yeah.
It's like, man, I love her, but like when it's good,
when it's good,
it's good. When it's bad, it's bad.
I will say, every time I've seen Massacre in my hand, I have not been able to cast it for free.
Yeah.
I've never had an opportunity to go, oh, I can cast this Massacre for free, kill the board, do the thing.
Right. And Massacre, for those who don't know, it's 2 and 2 black, so it's 4 mana, and so it feels bad to not cast for free. But if an opponent controls a plains, and you control a swamp, so if those 2 conditions are met, then it's free, and it gives all creatures -2/-2.
Yep.
So
board wipe.
2 conditions have to be met for it to be good. So I do think Cut Down fills this slot better, which is getting rid of those problem creatures. And we don't care about wiping the whole board. We already have Toxic as our board wipe. We just need to get rid of one problem creature. We just need to get rid of 1 or 2 problem creatures. And
it does help in the regards though if like someone had an oof and then someone else has an oppo and we want to kill both at the same time. Massacre gets both of them. The issue
for 4 mana.
The issue is relying on having someone having a plains, which does not happen that much.
No, I mean it does against Blue Farm. They'll have a plains.
Sometimes. Yeah, if they fetch that scrub. I mean they'll fetch Underground Sea most of the time first.
Yeah, and then also I mean at that point if the board state you described is in effect, then I just tutor for Toxic. At that point, because Toxic does enough for us. We don't need
Toxic also
Massacre.
kills a Tivit.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Yeah, so all the more reason I don't think Massacre does enough. I would rather run the Cut Down because it will always get rid of our problem pieces for 1 mana. Always.
And
under any circumstance. Exactly.
Anything we would have killed with Massacre anyways is most likely getting killed by the Cut Down as well.
Yeah, so we can move this to the main deck. Infernal Grasp. Now this is an extra one, but it destroys any creature.
Yeah, so it's 1 and a black, destroy any creature, you lose 2 life. For instant. I think it's one of the better black removal spells.
It's this or Cut Down. For me.
It's this or Cut Down, so 1 extra mana to kill anything versus the restriction of total power toughness 5 or less.
Yes. My argument against Infernal Grasp is there is nothing that is more than a combined power and toughness of 5 or less that we care about.
That we care about killing?
Yes. Name one thing that we care about killing that really is just a silver bullet piece that we cannot overcome that has a combined power of toughness of more than 5. Can you name one? Maybe you can. I don't know.
I know, I'm thinking now. I'm not entirely sure if there's anything in there that we
Because I'm thinking Dranith.
care about.
I'm thinking Dranith. Because Dranith stops our top deck line.
Or a top deck line.
Top deck line. I'm thinking oof. I'm thinking opposition agent. I'm thinking Bowmasters. Jinx. I'm thinking, and what do all those creatures have in common?
They're all 5 or less.
Exactly. Yeah. And so why would I spend double the mana when I could just spend 1 black and just get rid of any of them? You know what I mean?
I can see that. Infernal Grasp is like if we're mid to late game and we got an Atraxa swinging at us, we're like, all right, kill that.
How often does that happen?
Or a Tivit if we have to pay the ward, but then again we have to pay 5 for the ward. Which, that's rough.
At that point, just take the L, dude.
Tivit got it.
We should win before Tivit gets rolling. We should win before Atraxa gets rolling. We're drawing so many cards.
I think it's a piece we should think about though, and we shouldn't really come from the considering yet.
No, it's safe from the considering for sure.
Mm-hmm. Which in the same vein, there's Baleful Mastery.
Right. Yeah. Let's take a look at that. So that one draws our opponents a card.
Yeah, but I mean, in that sense, an opponent draws a card. We just have the mono green player draw a card. Yeah. We have the Abzan player. We have someone that's not running blue draw a card. Because it's 3 and a black for an instant. You may pay 1 and a black rather than pay the spell's mana cost.
Which we'll do.
Which 100% of the time we will do.
No, yeah, never.
If the 1 and a black cost was paid, an opponent draws a card. Exile target creature or planeswalker. So it's one of the only ways we have in mono black to exile a creature or planeswalker, which I think might be worth it.
Why? But under what circumstances will we need to exile something that kills us?
Yeah, I mean, exiling any piece that we don't want getting recurred.
I see. Okay, but here's the thing. Oftentimes, we want to be patient and leave the stacks piece up until the moment we can remove it and win at instant speed.
Exactly.
This deck is quick enough to win the exact same turn we've removed the thing, especially if the thing that we use to remove the thing is only 1 mana.
I mean, there are some niche cases where, like, say, Brewlord's our only creature in our graveyard. In any graveyard. And we want to exile the I don't know. What would be stopping us from reanimating at that point? An Oof, because we're going to go for a Pier line.
Sure.
If we kill the Oof, our reanimation spell can get swatted to the Oof if it's the only other creature in graveyards. If we exile it, there's nowhere to swat it. It protects us from swat. It's a very niche case. I think exile is worth it for what death triggers happen, or with Agatha's Soul Cauldron going around, we want to exile a Ballista.
Sure. I just think these are edge cases we'd be controlling for, and we'd need to take a deeper look at our interaction suite to see what we're lacking. I think
we have Deadly Relic already, which is good.
Exactly. We have Dismember too, which isn't exiling, but it
gets around indestructible.
It gets around indestructible, which isn't relevant in cEDH as much as it is in casual, admittedly. Yeah. Baleful Mastery, I think we keep it in the considering board. I don't see a justifiable way to do it.
Yeah.
Not yet, at least.
And still within the removal suite, we have Soul Shatter.
Yes, Reign of Filth. I feel the same argument with the Bubbling Muck.
Oh yeah, Reign of Filth is in that.
Do you want to?
Reign of Filth is a better ritual, I will say, being an instant, and it says you can sack your lands for black, which gives us that extra mana if we really need it.
Right.
Which we would.
We sometimes. Don't often have a lot of lands. Usually, Reign of Filth is good for ad nauseam lines.
Yeah.
I don't think we're on that. I don't feel
with our Pier line. I like it.
Maybe, but we don't have any problems casting the Scourge Familiar. At least
if you do have problems, then you need. And I have been. There have been moments where I couldn't cast the Scourge Familiar, and I just had to figure out a way to discard a card. Which I have found the way because we had Overeager Apprentice.
Okay.
I don't remember exactly how I discarded a card, but I think it was that way.
Okay.
Or just going to end step discarding everything and then instant speed reanimation.
I'm not convinced on the Reign of Filth. I think we can move on from it if you're comfortable with it, because I think it falls in the same camp as Bubbling Muck.
I would cut Bubbling Muck out of the considering and leave Reign of Filth in, probably.
I agree with that. Let's do that. Withering Boon, your pet card.
Yeah. This is just my pet card wanting to keep it in, or wanting to put it in. It's 1 and a black for an instant. Counter target creature spell, you lose 3 life, or pay 3 life counter target summon spells, the original text, but it's black's way of countering things, and it counters creatures. So, countering a Thassa's, countering a Dockside, countering an Oof, countering a Bowmasters, countering an Archon, countering anything that slows us down. I mean, countering a Dothy, that's worth it. But we're usually not the deck to be reacting to this stuff.
Yeah, and we don't need to be countering things. We just need to remove it and then win.
Yeah.
And then usually if we have 2 mana up, it's because we're gonna win. If we have 1 mana up, it's because we need to remove the thing to then win.
Yeah,
I
it's
just
in a
don't
rough
think
spot.
winning-
I just think it's funny because no one expects the black deck to counter the creatures.
You ready to talk about this one?
Yes, Soul Shatter. So I've been actually using this instead of Overeager Princess for a bit. I like it.
Should I talk about why I run Overeager Apprentice and why I think it is important?
Yeah, talk about that first, and then we'll.
Okay. So this is listed in the primer. So I'll consult that because otherwise I'd be repeating myself. But basically, the whole point of Overeager Apprentice is because it's a 3 mana investment, which is like, yeah, it sucks. It does offer you a couple of utilities, though, which are extremely important for this list specifically. So it's a 3 mana investment that lets you discard something at instant speed.
Probably talk about what it does then.
Yeah, sure. It's 2 and a black for, it says discard a card, sacrifice Overeager Apprentice to add 3 black to our mana pool. So the point of this card is you will invest 3 mana into it, and it will give you a full return on that investment provided you discard a card and sacrifice this thing.
Yeah.
The point of that is that it allows us to discard our reanimation targets at instant speed, so we telegraph our lines less. That's number 1. It gives us an immediate return on that investment, so then reanimate the thing that we discarded at instant speed. It's important to be able to do this because there are times when there are less than 8 cards in hand, and we can't discard our reanimation targets through our cleanup step after we draw with Braids, so we need to have a way to reliably discard a card at instant speed. And the other thing is it filters our mana if we don't have enough black as well. If we need to cast something like a Necropotence or a Bolus Citadel where we need that triple black, this thing can filter our mana.
Yeah.
And if it survives the turn cycle, it can ritual us. So the slot it takes in the list basically is if you draw it and you think, oh, this might be a dead card, it's not. Invest the 3 mana, and then once you draw with Braids, if you get that big Villas, you get that big Disciples of Gix, you get that big card, just discard it, sack the Overeager Apprentice, it'll give you that triple black back. Because of how the rules work, you can actually pay the cost of activated abilities in any order, so you should sack him first and then discard the card, so that your top deck instant reanimation spells like Shallow Grave and Corpse Dance can reanimate the thing you discarded.
Yeah.
So that's the point of that card. It just feels a really niche role, and I've never had a problem investing the 3 mana into it because it always gives me a full return on the investment in triple black, filters my mana, and it rituals me if it survives a turn cycle, which it usually can because people don't kill it. People don't know why it's in your
It comes
deck.
back to that whole, like, do you really want to wait the turn cycle?
No, well, that's not the main reason it's in there.
Yeah, the main reason is to do it on an instant speed, get the 3 mana back, and reanimate something.
Well, I would say the main reason I run it is if I have that big fatty in my hand, that big
you discard
Broodlord, and Braids draws me into 6 cards, and I have a Broodlord rotting in my hand, that's a big feels bad. I want to be able to invest that 3 mana, get a return on my investment, discard the Broodlord, and then potentially reanimate him at instant speed, or reanimate him at sorcery speed, it doesn't matter. The point is, I'm gonna get the mana back that I invested. It's a full return on investment. So it's a very technical sort of like stat reason why I run it, but maybe we don't need it and I'm just coping, but I like to control for that situation because I don't like cards rotting in my hand in a deck where I'm supposed to have great cards in my hand by drawing them all the time, so I don't know.
So in that slot, I've actually been running, it's not the same role.
Mm-hmm.
I just took the 3 mana and I'm like, I'm going to cut this 3 mana for a different 3 mana.
Mm-hmm.
It's Soul Shatter. Now, Soul Shatter might also just be a pet card of mine to be putting it in this deck.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 2 and a black instant that says each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker with the highest converted mana cost among creatures and planeswalkers they control. I like it because it's a Tivit killer, it's an Atraxa killer, it's a Tavesh killer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're going to want them to sack, and if they only have 1 creature on board, Oppo also is a pretty high converted mana cost in terms of cEDH.
It can be, sure, yeah.
It can be early game. Someone flashes out an Oppo, they dark red Oppo. You're like, oh, that's the highest converted mana cost you got on board. You get an Oppo and a dork, sack that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think it fulfills a role where we 3 for 1 our opponents with that, which is what we want to do if we have multiple opponents with stacked creatures, or if we have multiple opponents getting a bunch of value off their high CMC. Like they got commanders, like we're facing down a Kenrith, we're facing down a Tivit, and they're just doing the thing. You're like, all right, sack that.
We do have a card that does satisfy this rule, and that's Sheoldred's Edict.
Yeah.
Do you want to double up on the effect? Or do you think Sheoldred's Edict doesn't do a good enough job, and if so, why?
I think Sheoldred's Edict does a great job of fulfilling that role. I think doubling up on the effect makes it... I think doubling up on the effect is really good for us, considering we're trying to push towards... If we can't win before opponents set up their value engines, we're trying to push towards the mid game, so we want to be able to stumble them a bit.
Okay.
And I want to be able to set them off their balance a little bit, so that they're busy setting up, and if we kill their high CMC creatures, and they're like, okay, it's their commander, next turn I'm just going to tap out, I'm going to play it again, you're tapped out, got you. Instant speed reanimate.
I would cut a Deluge for it, but maybe I wouldn't, because even though Deluge is sorcery speed, whereas what you mentioned is an instant, Deluge gets rid of everything. Yeah. I just can't find a cut, and I found Overeager to be too clutch in situations where I really need him.
I guess my thing is I haven't found Overeager just to be like super clutch.
Yeah, I mean he is a weird card to play. I'll be honest, and there is another card that we're going to talk about in just a minute that does fulfill his role. We can talk about that now because you added that. That is Sinister Concoction.
Sinister Concoction. Yeah.
Yeah, this card's cool.
It's just a 1 black enchantment for. It has an ability, 1 black, pay 1 life, put the top card of your library into your graveyard, discard a card, sacrifice Sinister Concoction. After all that cost paying, destroy target creature.
It has 5 things you need to do to pay its cost.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh man.
5
things to do. You Exodia this card out.
Yeah.
It's the Exodia of paying costs.
Yes.
I think it's pretty cool. I looked at it earlier today, and I just wanted to throw it in the considering, see if maybe we can find a spot for it. I mean, it's an enchantment, so at the very base, it's 1 black, draw 3 cards with Braids, because nobody's sacking enchantments. You have that ability, discard a card on there, so it's mill and discard, which are both very important, because if you don't have that fatty in your hand, you discard some random land that you don't need, and then you hope you mill the big creature for instant speed reanimation. But if you do have that fatty in hand, it discards.
It also can act as a pseudo entomb if you have a top deck tutor, and then you can
if you vamp tutor and then do the thing.
Maybe, yeah.
It also just destroys any creature, which is relevant in terms of like we have Snuff Out, which is destroy target non-black creature. Dismember only hits up to 5 toughness. Cut Down only hits up to 5 CMC or 5 total power toughness. I think Sinister Concoction is interesting enough to look at.
And it's a 2 mana investment to do all of that stuff.
2 mana investment to get things in our graveyard and and destroy any creature.
Whereas the other one is a 3 mana investment.
But you do get your 3 back.
But you do get your 3 back, but it's a higher barrier to entry for the effect. Do we need a lower barrier of entry to gain the effect and get an extra special thing, which is destroying your creature?
Yeah.
We might want it. I don't know. Maybe.
I think it's good enough to test out, and I think I might test it.
Over eager?
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
So I have Soul Shatter in that spot. I'm going to switch out Soul Shatter for Sinister Concoction. And see how that works.
Okay. I almost want to. I want you to try it out first, but I think I'm going to join you.
I think you should try it out and see how it works.
Okay, for sure. Yeah, I can definitely do that because Overeager is very good. It does fill the slot very well, but Sinister Concoction could be a better option.
Yeah, because that added effect of destroying any creature is actually...
Yeah, it's an extra thing. That is definitely something to look at. And then worst comes to worst, we just cast it for our black and draw 3 cards.
Which is Ancestral Recall.
Yeah.
The worst part of this card is its Ancestral Recall.
Yeah, you know what? I don't know. I mean, I do like Overeager because of what it offers, but
3 mana investment. This could be a
2 mana investment.
I mean, in all honesty, if you see this in a turn 1 Braids hand, you can Jeweled Lotus Braids out and cast this. That's
you can't do that for.
You can't Overeager. You can't do it with an Overeager.
Okay, you know what? Here's what I'm gonna do. Okay, I'm gonna update the primer. I'm going to add this into the list for now.
I think we could just test it and then add it to the list later, but you might want to, if you want to do that right now.
I want to test it. Well, see, I'm an experimental fellow, so I like to test out things, and then go back to what I know. So I know Overeager is good for the slot. I know it's good, but here's the thing: if Sinister Concoction is better for the slot, I'll be able to know right away. Yeah. So what I want to do is test out the Sinister Concoction, And then if it doesn't perform to the same level as I'm used to with Overeager, then I will make the switch.
Okay.
And then I'll update the primer. I'll update the primer right now to just let people know that it's not currently in the list, like not in current list. I'll do that. But aside from that, I'm not convinced fully without testing that it's gonna fill the same role.
I think it's a good card to look at.
Yeah, for sure. And I will look at it, and I made the swap. So yeah, let's give it a shot. Yeah, let me do this real quick.
Yeah, not in current list, and just...
Yep. Yeah, we can cut this part out too while I'm doing this. Because I do think that's a very valid point. I also want to try it out because it's a 1 mana black enchantment for sure. Yeah, I think you put me on it.
Okay, and for our considering, we've got artifacts, I want to say.
Artifacts, yeah. Couple things here. Main camps are going to be... artifact producing 1 mana artifacts, like I think you added those.
So yeah, we have Paradise Mantle and Springleaf Throne. They both fulfill about the same role. However, Paradise Mantle is free, which is huge.
Mm-hmm.
So if Paradise Mantle 0, equipped creature has tap, add a mana of any color to your mana pool, which is another any color rock, which could lead to playing Paradise Grasp if we run both of them.
Maybe.
And it's a equip for 1. So 0 mana, pay 1 to equip it, tap Braids for mana. If you use it, you tap Braids for mana, then you sack it to Braids at end step, draw 3 cards.
Mm-hmm.
0 mana, draw 3 cards is its base form, which is really good.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you want... The issue with Paradise Mantle is you want to keep it on the board, equip to Braids to net more mana.
Right. And you can sack it. I think this would take the role of...
Jeweled Amulets.
I
think 100% we should do that swap.
Well, here's the thing. Jeweled Amulet works with Braids not out there. This thing needs Braids to work, which is why I'm leaning more towards Jeweled Amulet. Jeweled Amulet's more of a true dork.
Braids.
Yes, exactly. So I do think Jeweled Amulet is the superior choice for that slot in terms of a dork.
The issue with Jeweled Amulet my issue with it is a lot of times it's colorless mana or no mana at all.
Really?
Whereas Paradise Mantle is any color, so you're guaranteed to get black off of it.
Sure. I think even if Jeweled Amulet makes colorless mana for you, though, it can still cast Braids.
Not if you only have a colorless lands in your hand and a Jeweled Amulet.
Well, at that point, mulligan.
Yeah.
Right? Like I don't think Paradise Mantle solves the problem that you're describing, because it still requires Braids to work.
Yeah.
And we don't have any other creatures that can work that come into play before Braids, usually. So I think Paradise Mantle is a worse form for this list specifically, rather than Jeweled Amulet. Because Jeweled Amulet
I can see that argument of Jeweled Amulet helping your mulligans.
Yeah, because think about this. Jeweled Amulet comes down, you add the black, and then you get a turn 2 Braids. Paradise Mantle comes down, attaches to nothing, it does nothing for you. Which is also what Springleaf Drum is like, which is another thing that we're considering.
You need an untapped creature, yeah.
Mm-hmm, yeah, exactly. So I just don't think tempo-wise these cards make sense at all.
Yeah, I'm thinking because it's cheap Braids, you can throw them out. Mm-hmm. Well, like, you cast Braids, you want turn 1 Braids anyways, you throw these out and you can get mana off of it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But yeah, Jeweled Amulet does fill the role a little bit better.
Yeah.
I think we should still keep them in considering, because if we do come across Jeweled Amulet not working as well, we can try these in that same slot.
I mean, you can cut a land for them, but I don't think we should. We're already on 25.
I don't think we need to cut any more lands. We're at 25. It's pretty low.
25 is low, but yes, you're going to get 1 every turn cycle.
The math works out.
Yeah, you're drawing 3 cards of Braids, 1 at your draw step. Most likely one of those will be land, so yeah, it's okay. Glasses of Urza is a cope card. We don't need to talk about that.
Copium. That's your Git Probe.
Yep, nope. That's our Git Probe, and Git Probe isn't even great right now, unless you're in
Storm.
Yes, exactly. Gerard's Hourglass Pendant, bro.
This is a tournament card. This is not a regular playing messing with your friends kind of card.
Yeah. Basically, it's a 1 mana flash artifact. It says if a player would begin an extra turn, they skip that turn instead. Wonder who that's for. I think it's probably for a Sphinx.
Times Eve.
It's probably for a Sphinx deck. You pay for and exile it to return to the battlefield tapped all artifact, creature, enchantment, and land cards that were put into your graveyard from the battlefield this turn.
It saves you from a toxic. It saves you from a dam. It saves you from...
Which we already don't give a... Like,
We
what if
usually
you're
don't
white?
care.
Yeah, our board state is empty until we win. This is just to stop Tivit from taking extra turns. I don't think that's a good enough reason to run it. I don't think Tivit's as big of a boogeyman as it used to be.
I think it's still a pretty big man. Last tournament that we played, I came across a Tivit in almost every round.
How many were in the top 16?
0.
Yeah, no. Yeah, so that's my point. Sorry to your Tivit players out there. We just haven't seen... 2023, Tivit was insane. I feel like, because I started playing, like I said, 2023 last year, when I started playing, Tivit was crazy. It was doing super, super well. It was dominating tournaments. It was putting up so much numbers. Now, it's just not the same. So I feel like Tivit's definitely down more now. So if we're looking at a tournament EDH card, tournament cEDH, I don't think this
isn't there yet with enough Tivits. Like, there's not enough saturation of Tivits in the meta.
Right. That being said, if Tivit comes back, we're going to be looking at this again.
If we see some really good Tivit cards from, like, Outlaws or any other new sets that are coming out.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I still think Tivit's an extremely powerful commander. I'm still worried when I see it sometimes in my pods, but it's just not the boogeyman it was in 2023, in my opinion. I just don't see it top 16ing as much anymore.
Lands. Okay, this is an auto include, this first one. I think we need to throw this in the deck.
Okay, so you want to tell us about that? Because I agree with you. I agree with you. Let's find a slot. I agree.
So Blast Zone is a land that enters the battlefield with a charge counter on it. It has tap, add a colorless, and it has a XX tap, put X charge counters on Blast Zone. And then, was it 3 mana tap?
3 and sack it.
Sack it.
So we need 4 mana to do it. Which we can do.
Yeah. I think we need it. I think we do it. Because this is one of the only ways we have of destroying
Grafdigger's
Cage. It automatically enters with 1 counter, which can pop our Grafdigger's Cage. If we need to go to long game, we can put a counter on it, pop a null rod. I think it is worth it. We do not have enough that can pop those artifacts.
I hate that we have to run it, but I feel like we do because we just don't have that artifact removal, man. Like we just don't. We have engineered explosives, but usually that's a 0 mana artifact we're sacking to Braids anyway.
And we can't even fetch an engineered explosive off of an Urza Saga.
I think we run it. I think it's a must run. Sadly, and the reason I say sadly is because we're gonna have to cut one of our lands. And I don't know if I like that, but what would you say is a land that we can cut? I'm looking at Urza Saga, to be honest with you.
Yeah, Urza Saga's not there. Because we want that Jewel Lotus turn 1.
Yeah.
We don't want to wait 3 turns for our rock.
Yeah. I think I'm okay with cutting Urza Saga.
I think we cut Urza Saga.
Yeah, because the thing is, Urza Saga gives us a big payoff in 3 turns.
Yeah.
But like by the time Urza Saga pays us off, usually we already have the resources required to win because we've already been drawing a lot with Braids. Yeah. This is something I don't I'm not convinced on. The other 2 are things that you've
I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of all
you've offered. Yeah. We got Crystal Vein, which
is tap, add 1 colorless, or tap, sack it, add 2 colorless.
That's your contribution. My contribution is Emergent Zone, which is another colorless land, but it gives our stuff flash.
Yep.
Do you want to talk about Crystal Vein and what it's done for you?
Crystal Vein is that extra mana. I mean, in all honesty, it's just, I think it's worth it. If you're trying to get to that Bold Citadel, you're trying to get to that Insidious Dreams, you're trying to get to any of those forcing to your higher spells, turn 2 1 ring, or turn 1 ring makes it easy with Mana Crypt. I think it's worth it.
Now, here's my thing. Right now in that slot, I've got Phyrexian Tower here. That one, it does the same role. It adds a colorless. It can add 2 black instead of 2 colorless, though, for that one.
I think 2 black is needed. I think we might cut a Swamp for Crystal Vein. Or Peat Bog.
Or Peat Bog. Well, here's the thing. Out of Crystal Vein or Emergent Zone, what are we doing? Because Emergent Zone is important because, yes, a lot of our reanimation spells are instants already. A lot of our instant reanimation spells. Sorry, the mic almost fell. The instant reanimation spells we have are all obviously already instants, but the thing is, this deck needs to form buried alive piles.
Yeah, and we want to be able to do buried alive and instant speed reanimation on the same turn.
Exactly, and sometimes that's on an opponent's turn, right? So the emergent zone lets us formulate a buried alive pile at instant speed, lets us reanimate at instant speed, like we can always do. It lets us hoarding broodlord line at instant speed, lets us do all these things at instant speed. Yeah. So I think this emergent zone is more conducive to the deck's game plan. Crystal Vein is just, we need mana, and maybe we want that from a Phyrexian Tower or from a Crystal Vein. I think Phyrexian Tower or Crystal Vein and Peat Bog or Emergent Zone. That's what I'm thinking right now.
I think we cut Peat Bog for Emergent Zone.
Yeah, you want to do that? Bro, I'm so down. I love Emergent Zone. I want to try it so much. Crystal Vein, no, biggest thing of the day. Crystal Vein or Phyrexian Tower.
Oh, I want to keep
That's
both.
hard, right?
I think we could cut a swamp for it, in all honesty.
Really? Okay.
Going down to 15 swamps.
But here's the reason why we're worried about cutting swamps, by the way, is because we're on Lake of the Dead, which, when it comes into play, you need to sacrifice a swamp or sacrifice it.
Yeah.
Feels bad. But you can tap it and sacrifice a swamp to add 4 black to your pool. So Lake of the Dead requires a certain density of swamps, and I've found with 16 swamps in the deck, we can always turn it on. I've never had a problem turning on Lake of the Dead, and I'm worried that cutting one of those swamps might cause me to not be able to turn it on.
Yeah, I can see the worry there.
It may not seem like a big difference, but it really is.
It really is, but we have an Urborg. Mm-hmm. So it's like 17 swamps.
Yeah, like 17. So sure. So I'm saying with my current setup here, I've never had a problem turning on Lake of the Dead. I'm wondering if cutting one swamp will also give me problems turning on Lake of the Dead, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get you. I think Crystal Vein's worth it because it gives you... It's another City of Traders, Ancient Tomb, turn 1/1 ring type of effect. Mm-hmm. Which, if we're not getting turn 1 or 2 rings,
say that again.
Turn 1, it allows the turn 1/1 ring.
Oh, yeah, it does. It does.
Which I think is worth it.
Probably.
Because, I mean, like, let's scroll up to our artifacts and other spells. Mm-hmm. If we're going turn 1, what do we need that extra mana for? The 2 mana.
Honestly, I feel
or
like
for Bolus the Citadel, which is worth it.
I feel like I haven't needed the extra mana turn 1. I feel like what I've needed is the extra mana to go off with
black mana.
With black mana, which is why I prefer Phyrexian Tower right now.
I'm thinking we cut a swamp for it so we have both options. I think it's something.
You know, here's what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
You keep Crystal Vein, and you keep grinding that. And then if you ever feel like you have problems turning on Lake of the Dead, let me know.
I haven't actually.
And if you don't, okay, you have. Well, how many swamps are in your list?
I'm on 16 swamps though. I have. I'm not running. I have. I want to say Crystal Vein was in Peat Bog slot.
So let's do this. Copy this land base, but cut a swamp for the Crystal Vein
and see how that works.
Yeah. You try that out, and then if that works for you, then I'll try it.
Yeah, I'm the test list currently. Testing like 3 different cards at a time.
Yes. Well, because I think I'm less risk averse than you. I think I'm pretty conservative when it comes to controlling for variance in general. Mm-hmm. But you did put me on Sinister Concoction, so that's pretty cool.
That one's pretty cool.
But yeah, that's just kind of my style of playing Magic. I really I understand that cEDH is a high variance format, and so I really try to control for as many variables as I can. But I do think that you taking these risks with cards that you're a fan of that you've already had success with, I think you're going to be more of a reliable source when it comes to evaluating whether or not these cards are effective. Yeah. Because I don't have an experience with Crystal Vein, so I may be biased against it. You might be biased for it, but if you can find...
it goes both ways.
Right. It may go both ways, but I think you have an easier time articulating a path that gets us to an effective way of playing the card. Whereas if I try to play it, I might just dismiss it outright.
Yeah, you see it go wrong one time, and it's just like, oh, well, never mind.
Right. Whereas if you see it go wrong one time, you'll be like, oh, but it's gone right for me all these times. What did I do wrong?
Yeah.
So you already have more mileage with the card, so you should be on the card for now.
Just to see how it works.
Yeah.
I've been on Crystal Game for a while. I think it should go in every monocolor deck. Potentially some 2-color decks.
You might be right.
It's a colorless land that when you need it becomes 2 colorless, which I think is great.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's true, and at no cost except for sacking the land.
Yeah. Which if you're sacking the land, you're either doing something huge that wins you the game, or doing something huge that will win you the game eventually, and you're gonna get your land back. The One Ring.
And it's the same logic with Phyrexian Tower, but I do think it's both or Phyrexian Tower maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna see how both works out.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, that is our Braids list. The link is in the description, so you guys can currently see what we're cooking up. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. Be sure to follow us on Instagram. Special thanks to our producer Caitlin for making our episodes great. And you guys have a wonderful, wonderful week. Thanks so much for tuning in for this episode.
Thank you guys for coming.
We'll catch you next Thursday.
It's good.
Come on in and sit on down. There's plenty of room all around. Just bust out your cards and take a seat. Come on and play some cEDH with me. Yeah. Come on in and sit on down. There's plenty of room all around. Just bust out your cards and take a seat. Come on and play some cEDH with me. Yeah.
Braids.